All right, everyone. So welcome to today's webinar, Facilitating Employee Engagement. We're coming to you live on July 18th. My name is Brooke Warrington. I am the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're so happy that you could join us today. I do have to go through a disclaimer with you super quickly. So this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. So just keep that in mind. All right, so before we get started, I do want to familiarize you with some of the features available and how the environment works. If you look at the top of your screen, you'll see an icon of either a person with their hand raised or maybe just a hand. Know that with that icon, you could either raise your hand, you could agree, you could disagree, or you can even signal that you're stepping away. Okay, so now your screen should look similar to the graphic I have displayed here. So to the bottom left, you'll see a box that says Files. This is where you'll find today's presentation. Feel free to download a copy for yourself. You just simply click the item you would like to download, then click the arrow pointing downwards, and you'll be prompted to save or print the materials based on your device's permissions. That next box, a little bit over to the right, that says Web Links To, that has today's survey, as well as any other links that might come up throughout the presentation. And then all the way to the right, you guys should see a chat box. So this is how you're going to communicate with our instructor today and with us here, the NLC staff. So if you have any questions during the presentation, we encourage you to interact by using the chat box. So Camille might notice the question pop up herself, or if she hasn't noticed, I'll go ahead and say something. So any questions you guys have, just send them on in the chat and know that I'll be moderating throughout. We do encourage class participation, so feel free to comment on anything as well. And if you're having any kind of tech support issues, you can also submit those there in the chat box. All right, and with that, it is with great pleasure that I introduce today's speaker, Camille Koster. She's going to be talking with you guys about facilitating employee engagement. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you, Camille. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. I will introduce myself in the next slide after we kind of set the ball and set the tone for what we're doing today. Welcome, you guys. I'm so excited that you're here. I know you guys are here because everyone is talking about employee engagement. And as a leader, you play several roles within your organization. If you're anything like me, you may be a subject matter expert, an individual performer, a technical or project manager, and with all that, you're probably leading staff. You probably manage yourself, manage a team, and then support processes across the organization. This means if you're at all like most managers or most leaders, you're constantly switching roles, you're switching tasks, you're dealing with new expectations every day. And so today we're going to talk about what it takes to keep a team highly performing and how to engage employees. So I know if you've heard any of the engagement data, you know that employees are drifting away from organizations. Even if they're not physically leaving, they're mentally, emotionally checking out. Only 1 in 4 employees strongly feel a connection to their culture, and only 1 in 3 strongly agree that they belong into their organization. And this all comes from Gallup, the Gallup data, and we'll talk about Gallup a little bit later. So we know that this has all come up kind of post-COVID, during COVID, but none of this is new information. You know, this is something that leaders have been talking about for years, but the conversation really did change during COVID, and the conversation became one that most leaders are having. The conversation went from engagement is an HR issue to now engagement is an everyone issue. So we're going to set the tone for that today and really talk about how we can make a difference in our organization when it comes to employee engagement. So who am I and why am I here? My name is Camille Koster. I am coming to you from the Cherokee Reservation in Oklahoma. I was raised here in Oklahoma. I have been in leadership for 30 plus years. So started my journey in leadership at 18 in the United States Navy, and then have worked 22 plus years in nonprofit. I also am a organizational leadership coach, have a master's in organizational leadership. And in addition to this, I'm a full-time facilitator for youth development also, but I eat, sleep, and breathe leadership. It's what I love the most. So as Brooke said, make sure if you have any questions along the way, stick them in the chat, and we will answer them as we go along. So let's look at what we're going to talk about today and look at where we're going to get. So why are we having this conversation today? Leaders, managers, employees are all seeing this idea of quiet quitting. It's not a new concept, like I said, but one of the things that we've seen, and one of the things that I've been coaching organizations on in the last 2 years, is this idea of employees not re-engaging in the workforce. And so that's why we're having this conversation, because the first time in many, many years, we have more unengaged employees than ever. Next, we're going to talk about what employee engagement is and what it is not. We're going to look at the latest stats. We're going to talk about how to build engagement, how you all can build engagement. And then we're going to talk about some direct strategies that you can make it happen. So let's jump in, and we will start with the idea that engagement is your job if you're the leader or manager. So like I said before, I think it's something that we saw as HR's job, we saw as the executive leadership team's job, we saw as a tribal administrator's job, but today we know that the person that has the most powerful impact on any employee is their direct manager or their direct leader. You have the power as the leader and manager to influence and impact your employees more than any policy, more than any situation, more than anything. So first of all, I just want to introduce this concept that the most effective managers take personal responsibility for creating an engagement environment. They create high levels of engagement over time by continually focusing on and anticipating their employees' changing needs. So we're going to talk a lot about needs, employee needs today, because for the first time, I think in history, we've gone beyond talking about employee performance to understanding that unless we're meeting the needs of our employees, they will not perform. So engagement doesn't have to be overwhelming, or it doesn't have a complicated process. It is being aware of what our employees need to be successful and how to manage with these needs in mind. By making small, consistent shifts in engagement, you can help your team become more effective, more efficient, and committed to their work. So what is employee engagement? So I introduced Gallup to you a moment ago. I would love to know in the chat if anybody has heard of Gallup or studied with Gallup, seen any of their reports. Gallup is an organization that was established in 1935. They began studying organizational leadership really before the term organizational leadership was around. At this point, they have done a deep dive with 27 million people. So I'm just not talking about a single survey, but we're talking that they have worked with teams, done deep level surveys, studied with organizations for a year at a time. Oh, and I see Bessie did a Gallup last year. So, you know, it is an organization that has focused their entire mission around really two things. So they have a mission to help people find their natural strengths through their Strength Finders tool. And then they have another tool that we'll talk about today that's about employee engagement. So Gallup actually started talking about this about 30 years ago, before the term employee engagement was actually a term. They were actually trying to figure out how employees perform their best. What made them want to have that motivation to perform their best? So now they've studied in over 195 countries to understand the predictors of employee and team performance. Their studies have covered various cultures, nationality, people groups throughout the world. So we'll be looking at the latest findings. I attended the Gallup Engagement Conference in June. Great conference. And when I look at this across the board, whether we're talking about a reservation that is remote, or we're talking about a reservation that is, in a city, whether we're talking about us as Native Americans working in organizations outside our reservation, this is human behavior, so it applies to all of us. So what Gallup's research proves is that when employees engage, they exert extra effort on the job. They go above beyond their role. And I think all of us want to see that in our employees. I mean, we want to see that in ourselves. They're more productive, they're more profitable, and they're more focused on the customer. They have fewer safety incidents and are more local, or more focused on staying with the company, not moving away from it. So, you have to ask, what is in this for the employee? Because this is great. We want employee engagement. We want to drive employee engagement so that we can have the best organization in it. But what's in it for them? So engaged employees really do believe, and they have their workplace needs met. So if you think about going to work every day, and the reason you want to go to work, and the reason that you're going and doing a job, you feel like your needs are met, that's really important to employees. Also, they feel like they are having a contribution where they are. They feel like they're giving back. So today, when we talk about employee engagement, this is really an unwritten social contract between us and our employees, because it's what they're looking for, and the data definitely shows that. So for a minute, we're going to just take a pause, and we're going to talk about you all. So if you are here and you lead people, I'd love for you to put how many people you lead in the chat. Just stick a number in there of how many people you lead. So before we go any further about engagement, I said that engagement starts with you. So let's take a moment and think about what words describe your best day. What words would make up what makes up a great day for you? What is it that really makes a day different for you from others? And then how do you feel on your best day of work? On your best day of work, do you impact others in a positive way? Is your momentum, your excitement contagious? So we want to start with this because we know that if the supervisor, the leader, the manager is not engaged, then we will never have engaged employees. So as we start this conversation, I just ask you to take a second and check in with yourself. Would you consider yourself engaged? Would you consider most of your days that you go to work, they are opportunities for you to have your best day, that you feel productive, that you feel like you are at your best, and that you're positively impacting your employees? So I told you that we're going to talk about what engagement is and what it's not. So a lot of people think that engagement is just satisfaction, that someone is satisfied at work, therefore they're engaged. But the difference really is that satisfaction may or may not increase an employee's productivity. Satisfied employees will put in their time, they'll come to work, but not necessarily putting in their energy into what they're doing. So if someone is satisfied but not engaged, you see them have that wait and see attitude. They're kind of sitting on the sidelines until somebody tells them to do something, but you just don't see that drive or innovation. So engaged employees work with passion. They work with consistently high levels. They drive innovation and move their employees and organizations forward. So, for years we did employee satisfaction surveys trying to make sure that our employees were happy, but we know that that's just the baseline for really what we're talking about today. So if you think you're at a place where your employees are satisfied, but not necessarily engaged, let's talk about 4 steps, how to take that next step to introducing engagement. So there are 4 major differences between satisfaction and engagement, according to Gallup, and here's what they are. So the first one is that engaged employees have well-defined roles. So I will tell you, out of all of the strategies that Gallup spends the most time on, it is definitely this one, because there is nothing worse for an employee to come to work and their role is ambiguous. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to be doing it. No one has defined what excellence or acceptable or not acceptable performance is. They have to actually know what it is that's expected of them. So if you want to ensure that you can invite your employees into engagement, make sure that they know their role. Make sure that they know that you have individual goals that they're meeting, that they can get up and work towards those things every day rather than coming to work and just doing whatever comes their way. The second thing is that to go from satisfaction to engagement is to ensure that your employees are making a strong contribution, that you have set the stage for them to step into making a strong contribution. So I told you guys that in addition to this, I'm a youth trainer, and I have been on the road for the last 2 weeks. Went to 5 different reservations and trained about 125 youth on financial literacy. And I can tell you, I walk away knowing that I have made a difference. I have made a contribution to reducing poverty in Indian country. And that is what makes me come alive and get up every morning and want to work harder. So, ensure that your employees have that connection to knowing that they're making a strong contribution. The next one is that they are connected to their larger team in the company. A great story that all of us have probably heard in some form or fashion is a gentleman who was a custodian at NASA. And he was walking down the hall one day and someone asked him what he did. And he said he put space shuttles on the moon. But when they finally figured out what he really did, he was the custodian. He was sweeping the floors. He was cleaning the toilets. But to him, he was still putting those spaceships on the moon, because if that office wasn't taken care of, then the engineers couldn't do what they could do. So, how does your team fit in to the larger picture of the company? Make sure that they know that. And that last one is, we're not in an era of being stagnant anymore. We know that things are changing, things are moving, things are progressing. I think of all the broadband internet that's coming across Indian country, that we're going to start to see some big changes, the infrastructure changes that the White House is making. And so, things are changing for us. So how can you enforce and make sure that your team knows that they are part of that change and are always moving forward? All right, so now we know the difference between what satisfaction is and then where we're at with engagement. So let's talk about the three different types of employees. So for many years, I think we've all heard that our greatest assets are employees, but what if they are not engaged employees? What we do know is that we have a workforce that's actively working in opposition to us if they are actively disengaged. We have a workforce that are kind of checked out and they're coming to work every day, but they're not really fulfilling their jobs. It's like they're sleepwalking. And then we have employees who are working passionately. They're connected to the companies. So when we talk about our employees being our greatest asset, they are our greatest asset when they are engaged. So we as leaders, it's our job to drive that engagement, to help them bring that role of engagement to their life every day. So next, let's look at each of these closer and talk about the actual numbers that are out there today. I think this is shocking. And when I train this as part of a curriculum I train, the biggest thing is that aha moment of, okay, now what do we do with this information? because it's a little disturbing at one point. So today, across the population, only 1 in 5 employees are considered engaged. So that tells us that 20% of all of our employees are considered engaged employees. And I'm hoping right now that you're a leader or a manager that you say, no, my numbers are higher. But mostly they're pretty accurate. So what does that mean when somebody is truly engaged? It means that they are involved in, enthusiastic about, and they are committed to their work and the contributions to the organization. They're positive. They come to work positive. They work with passion. They feel a profound connection to their company. And a lot of times, I know that we are in tribal communities and we may be connected to the community of the tribe, but are we connected to the organization if we're working in that tribe? They want to know their desired expectations for their role so that they can meet them. And most of the time, they want to exceed them. Engaged employees are naturally curious about the company that they're in and how they fit in. They perform at consistently high levels. Matter of fact, an engaged employee, if you ever see them not performing at that high level, you may actually ask, hey, what's going on? Something has changed. Next, they use their talent and strength every day. So I mentioned to you guys that another tool of Gallup's is the Strength Finder. And the Strength Finder's tool says that as employers, we want to ensure that we have our employees and their natural strengths 50% of the time or greater. So next, they want to drive innovation and consistently move their organization forward. So it's not just they want to be part of something that's helping move things in the right direction, but they actually want to be that person that does this. So like I said, this is 1 in 5 employees, about 20% of the population. I'd be interested to know if anyone kind of sees those stats in their organization, or do you feel like you have more engaged employees than 1 in 5? I see somebody has 5 employees, so that would mean maybe 1 in 5 of them is not engaged. Somebody with 9, so possibly 1 or 2 that may be engaged. So next, let's talk about the next category, and this is the not engaged. So these employees are more difficult to spot because they're just not exceeding and going beyond everything that you've asked them to do, yet they're not checked out and they can be difficult to spot. So these employees are not necessarily hostile or disruptive. They may be satisfied with their job, but they're really not working with passion. You really don't see energy and commitment out of them. They're the ones at 5 o'clock on the dot are running out the door. And I'm not talking hourly employees that you have to, but someone who is a salaried employee and they're watching the clock trying to get out the door. For most not engaged employees, they're really stuck in neutral. They show up for work and go through the motions. They really don't feel connected with the company, with you as a leader, with coworkers, and they're really not overly concerned about productivity, profitability, waste, or safety. If you ask them to tell you the mission or the purpose of the organization, they probably could not articulate it very well. So these are employees that if a better job came around, they would not hesitate to leave you. So worldwide, we see that about 61% of workers are not engaged. These employees represent a great opportunity for you all, or they create a great risk, because a not engaged employee can be taken to an engaged employee, or they can be actually discouraged and they can move into the next category. So once again, 1 in 5 are engaged, about 61% are not engaged, and then our last category is actively disengaged. So an actively disengaged employee is really not hard to spot. When I work with organizations and really work through everything from change management to performance issues to teamwork and communication, this idea of actively disengaged employees comes up so many times because there's a lot of disruption that takes place with an actively disengaged employee. So the actively disengaged employees are pretty consistently negative, and they seem to be against everything and everyone. What's worse, they insist on sharing this unhappiness with their colleagues. The actively disengaged employee will monopolize your time. They're coming to you with constant problems and no solutions. They cause more quality defects, contributions of theft. They miss more days of work and quit at a much higher rate than the other two categories. In short, these employees are pretty miserable at work. And sometimes I found them to be pretty miserable in life. And the work is just an extension of that. So, if someone is actively and disengaged, they're actually trying to pull someone else into that disengaged place with them. And so you see them just creating constant conflict. So worldwide, we see about 19%, so almost 1 in 5 again, workers that are actively disengaged. So if you think about that right now, we've got 1 in 5 really trying to take your company forward. We've got 1 in 5 opposing whatever it is you're trying to do. And then we have the majority of our staff somewhere in the middle, kind of in neutral, trying to figure out where they fit in and can go either way. So as you learn about this 3, which type of employee do you think you spend the most time with? So when we look at this statistically, most leaders think that they spend their time mostly with the more engaged employees, but when they've done the research, we found that you actually spend your time really more with the actively disengaged. So once again, according to the research, not a good place to be, because to take someone from actively disengaged to engaged, or to to not engage to engage is a very high-end high thing to do. How would you try to help them to become engaged? So Bessie, so the data really, so we'll talk about that just in a second, but I will tell you to get a person from actively disengaged to a place of not engaged is really that choice of that employee. And it is a conversation you introduce and have with them. And so we'll talk about that in the end, what you can do a little bit more. But statistically, it shows to take someone from actively disengaged to a engaged employee is a huge task, huge task. So what we're going to focus more on today is trying to get your not engaged to engaged, because when you get more engaged employees, the actively disengaged really kind of flush out, meaning that it's not a comfortable place to be when you have 75% of the workforce engaged, creating innovation, and then you've got a smaller amount of people who just are really not even contributing. So let's talk about what's next and really how we got to this conversation. So for many years, I, as a leader, starting out in the military at 18, was told, leave your emotions at the door, leave your life at the door. If it's not work related, my leader did not want to talk about it, and that was the conversation we've had many, many years in leadership. But those days are over. Those days are definitely over. So today, we know that human behavior is driven both by rational and emotional factors. So if I was a leader and my employees were 100% rationally driven, then everything I asked them to do, they would do without any personal perceptions. They would do without any of their own feelings. And they would just do exactly what I ask. But we know that that is very different. So understanding that employees' decisions, their behaviors, their choices, they're all predominantly based on emotional factors helps a manager connect to the emotional side of what's going on. We know that the health of the organization is directly connected to the physical, mental, emotional health of the employees. So I think back over my career that I have had 4 bosses in my entire career. And, I had 2 that I will say realistically looked at both me as a performing individual and a person with both rational and emotional factors. And those 2 bosses that looked at me not only as someone who performed for the organization, but someone as a person too, got a whole lot more out of me. They inspired me. They helped me in my leadership journey. And so, that's where we are today. It's very hard at this point for leaders to accept this because we've not been that leadership culture in the United States. We've not been focused on mental health. We haven't been focused on the person holistically, but we know to drive engagement and to not have that turnover that we've seen in the last couple of years, it's the conversation we're having today. Carrie, I would love to know what's not realistic. I would love to hear a little bit more about that. I know this is a challenging conversation, so I would love to hear it. So we're starting to have the question and starting to have the topic, starting to really have the conversation around the fact that emotions are at play today. that when we have a employee, that we have a relationship with an employee. It is a professional relationship. There is a role between a leader and employee. But today, that place of having a relationship is how we know that people actually stay in the organization when things are tough, when we have budget cuts, when challenges occur. We know that if an employee feels valued and they feel respected, which is an emotion, they're more than willing to stay when things are tough. They're more willing to do the harder work, to stay longer hours. And then, of course, we know if they feel like their opinion counts, that makes a big difference too. So, when we talk about having a conversation about opinions or making a suggestion, I know that we can't always follow through with everything that happens, but to validate them and thank them for that opinion is important. Okay, let me stop and read the chat real quick. All right, thanks so much. Okay, so next we're going to talk about 10 needs of employees. So as we go into these next 10 needs, this is where the Gallup data has clearly put in this idea that we used to talk about performance only. We have created leaders as a nation that were very administratively driven, and we really did leave out this idea of human development. And now what we're bringing to the table is both of those together. So we've set the foundation for employee engagement, and we've talked about the 3 types of employees. So here are 10 fundamental needs that we know that need to happen. So the first one we really have talked about before, that employees need to know what's expected. I met with an executive director a while back who was in charge of a food program, a tribal food program. And she actually worked with a community close to her. And as we talked, I was helping her get clear on setting expectations for her staff, because she was an executive director who was always full of ideas. She was an idea generator. And I sat in one of her staff meetings one morning, and as her staff talked, she just kept coming up with one idea after another. And as we moved forward working with her, I learned that really confused her staff, because they already had clear goals, clear expectations. But when she came to the team meetings and began to kind of feel like shift gears to the staff, it was confusing. So when I worked with her, we decided that it would be great for her to harness her ideas. She writes them down. If it's something she wants to move forward with, she'll talk about it. But, just knowing as a leader, even if we're just throwing something out versus we're saying it for our staff to do it, it's really important to know what is truly expected, or what is not expected of someone. So that second need is for managers to provide employees that allows them to do their best, to use their natural talents and their knowledge every day. So if you're not someone who has ever done personality findings with your staff, like the DISC or the Strength Finders, I encourage you to do so, because everyone has those natural bendings or those natural instincts. And the 4 lenses, yeah. So there's so many out there. I can't say that I found one to be so much better than the other, because they offer a lot. I am a facilitator in multiple personality test, but I can tell you, it tells us, how we do conflict, or if we avoid conflict. What strengths do I have that I'm bringing? And what are those things that please don't ask me to do because they're so far from who I am? The next one is to help employees see their value and acknowledge it. So we know as leaders that sometimes we see things in our employees that they don't see in themselves. Sometimes that they are contributing in ways that perhaps they've not even seen themselves. Things come so natural to them that they're so good at things that it's not a valid part of who they see themselves to be, but they're doing a great job. So as leaders, that's something that we are to come back and, encourage our staff that they're doing a good job, show them those things that perhaps they don't see. And then the last one is freedom from that unnecessary stress. So this is not only, stress from being a buffer in an organization when things are tough, because we know that happens. It's also about ensuring that they have the technology needs that they need, ensuring that we are providing systems and processes that support them, that support their role and support their job. It's about ensuring that they have autonomy so that they can do a good job and not feel like we're micromanaging them. So let's move on to the next ones. So number 5 is that employees need to know that they are more than just a number. This means that, the best example of this is that I've heard is had a young leader who actually talked to her employees about a personal goal. What is a personal goal that they're pursuing? One of them was pursuing a degree. And so every couple of weeks, she would ask her how her degree program's going, what class is she taking? And so, when you move beyond just the idea that that employee is there to perform, then they're more than just a number. Number 6 is that we are there to help them grow. When I know that my boss is looking out for my career, is looking out for new opportunities for me, I'm giving a totally different contribution than if I don't think anybody is there on my side. The next one is that employees need to be heard. I said that a minute ago, but they need to know that when they've actually contributed and said something to us, that we've listened. And so many times I think that they've heard us even say, hey, I took that forward to my leader. I took that to my boss. And, if they have a great idea and it gets moved forward, make sure they get all the praise for it. Okay, the next one is a tough one, but employees are working hard and they want to know that everyone else is working hard around them. So they want to have an open and honest conversation. And I say it's tough because we know that it's never a good idea to criticize an employee publicly, but we also know it's not a good idea to ever criticize an employee in front of another employee. And so as a team, we want to feel connected. We want to feel like we're making a contribution. And if we are a leader who ever says anything negative about one of our employees' teammates, we know that that directly impacts their engagement. The next one is about trust. So people really want to build bridges and they want to build friendships at work. So, during COVID, we had a lot of people that said the majority of their friendships were at work. Friendships have become a more important part of work than we've ever seen before. Now, we're talking about colleagues being friends, not necessarily a leader and their employees being friends. So, as leaders, are we holding events where these friendships are facilitated? Are we holding events that have some social time to them? And then lastly, learning and growing and challenging is part of life. So engaged leadership is not sugar-coated leadership. It's actually having the hard conversations. It's being transparent and authentic. And honestly, if we're expecting the best from ourselves and challenging ourselves and our employees see us doing that, then it's not hard when we challenge them. So I know this sounds like a lot. It's, for me, I think it's a new day for leaders. Like I said, I've been in nonprofit for many years, and nonprofit is a little bit different than, for-profit agencies a lot of times. But for leaders, and especially new leaders, or for leaders in struggling organizations, all of this can be really tough. So many managers go at this alone, or think that HR should be doing the improvements to engagement. So you have two options here. You can take this on as a leader. You can take this on as an organization, or I will present to you guys a tool that you could use to help move your engagement forward. I don't sell this tool. I'm not an endorser of this tool. I'm just telling you because I've used it and it can be very productive. But today, for those of you who want to just take this on yourself and not bring in an extra partner, I want to show you what you can do. So if you decide that this is way more than you can take on, but you know that you have a challenge with engagement, and you know that you have those disengaged employees, or a large amount, like more than you really want to handle yourself, of not engaged employees, then this is an easy way to help solve that. So this is the Gallup's Q12 Employee Engagement Survey. You can just go to gallup.com. Once again, I'm not a sponsor of this at all. It's just an incredible tool that we can use as leaders to really help us with this. You have to purchase a minimum of 4 of these surveys, but it's $60. And you can get it for your entire team. You can get it for your whole organization, whatever you want to do. But basically, with this tool, you will get a survey that focuses on 12 questions, and we'll talk about those 12 questions in a little bit, just in case you want to do this on your own. And then it gives you access for a year to resources, to different activities that you can do, to lots of libraries of things that you can, walk through with your staff. So one of those things that, if it's something you want to do, I want to put it out there for you. A great tool. It's something I work with different leaders across the nation. And if it just feels like a lot and you don't want to do this on your own, this is a great asset. So for you guys that say, you know what, that's not something I can do today, then let's talk about how you take engagement to that next level. So the first one is that we have to be available. And what that means is that if you are going to take action on anything in your organization, before you even start asking questions, I encourage you guys to ask yourself, why am I doing this? What am I willing to commit to? And are you truly committed to making the changes that you want to make or that you need to make? I say that because as soon as you introduce this idea of engagement, and as soon as you start having these conversations, then I encourage you to be available as you open the door. Because when you start asking these 12 questions and people have the platform for being authentic and actually trusting that something's going to happen, then the conversations usually really start. So if you're willing, I just encourage you to be willing to hear the answers of your team and truly listen beyond how you've listened before. So effective listening is a critical component of this. And it's going to help you make decisions moving forward on what to do. So there's about 10 steps to help you facilitate a meaningful conversation, and we're going to go through this. So first of all, I did say be available, but what that means is to be available for one-on-one conversations. We know that according to the engagement data that our staff need a conversation, a great engaged conversation once a week. Every single staff needs to know that someone cares about them and that someone is there for them. And you know what? It's probably the hardest thing when we start talking about engagement that feels a little unrealistic. You know, if you've got 30 staff, how are you going to have a conversation with them once a week? So, you know, I encourage you guys, if any of these feel like, wow, this is too much, I can't do that in the time frame I'm telling you, then recreate it to something that you can do. The second one is do not kick out a new engagement strategy or, you know, say, hey, we're going to take on this new engagement process. Just make it part of what you're doing already. Make it part of what's working already. So starting something completely new puts employees in this place of feeling uncomfortable about change, because here we go again with, you know, some new thing. But it doesn't need to be something you add in addition to your plate. It just needs to be a shift in how we lead. The next one is, when necessary, provide structure and direction. So, you know, a lot of times when we're facilitating team discussions or we're facilitating change or anything in our workforce, one of the things that we as leaders have to do is keep the conversations focused and moving in a structural direction so that we're staying positive. So one goal of every conversation is to understand each other. So seek to understand what employees are saying and their needs that they're speaking to you. Number 4 is spend more time listening than talking. You know, I think we probably all know the 80-20 rule, that as leaders, we're supposed to be actively listening 80% of the time and actually talking 20% of the time. But that's really tough because a lot of times we have a lot to say. Number 5 is provide encouragement. So one of the Gallup statistics says that we need to be praising our employees every single week, at least minimally one time a week. And you know what? That hasn't necessarily been part of leadership in the past. Their paycheck was their praise. Their paycheck, you know, we didn't need to outwardly say and reinforce things, but that has completely changed, and especially with our younger generations. So, you know, asking questions of how can we build on our success, and then being able to praise around what we've done to be successful. The next one is to listen beyond the words. So I said this earlier, but you know, when an employee is speaking, it's about listening to when they're pausing. It's about seeing the reluctance to answer a question. Nonverbal cues, the tone of the voice, you know, and asking questions for clarity when you don't understand something or when you really need to truly understand something better. So asking them to tell you more about something and using some great feedback mechanisms, such as, help me understand what you mean when you say that. Or, if I understand you correctly, you are saying. because so many times, we see things from our own expectations. We see things from our own level of leadership, not understanding how our employees may be seeing things very differently. The next one is closing with momentum. So every conversation that we're having with staff, every conversation we're having with our teams, we're ensuring that we're closing with excitement, or we're closing with that forward movement and telling them what the next steps are. So we're mapping out what the next steps for them and what the next steps for us are. And that goes back to that initial number one of ensuring that everybody knows expectations. And the last one is really talking about the why, explaining the why. So we know that staff really want to make a contribution today. They're showing up if they're giving their all and they have an idea and they share it with us and they never hear anything back. It's very discouraging. And, discouragement can take an engaged employee to that not engaged employee if it happens very regularly. So, even if we can't implement, like I mentioned earlier, even if we can't do anything today with an idea, it's so great to be able to thank them, to say, hey, I can't move forward with this today, but I'm definitely going to keep this in mind. And thank you so much for your feedback. So now let's look at the 12 questions. So if you're going to take this on your own, I'm going to give you a couple tools in a moment. You could do a screenshot. You guys have the PowerPoint, but we're going to walk through the questions, and then we're going to talk about, how you can facilitate these with your staff. So something that I have done for about 10 years is a concept called stay interviews. I don't know if anybody has heard of stay interviews or done any stay interviews, but a stay interview simply comes down to when you have an engaged employee or you have someone who's not engaged that you're trying to move to engaged, you figure out why they stay working for you. What is it that excites them every day about them getting up and coming to work for you and coming to work at their job? What is it that makes their job great? As a leader, what are you doing great? And what are some of the challenges that you can improve? As a team, do they have any ideas on how to improve the team, the team dynamic? So this has nothing to do with their performance. This really has to do with, hey, you're a valuable team player and I would love for you to stay. So in kind of thinking of that, here are 12 questions that will drive engagement. So, asking employees, do they know what's expected of them? When they are there any parts of their job that they're questioning, that are ambiguous, that they really don't know what they're supposed to be doing? Number 2, do they have the materials and equipment that they need? Do they have everything they need to be as successful as they can? Do they have a printer? The easiest thing is, I think, in nonprofit, do they have a printer that breaks down every day? And so it really frustrates them. But that's, everything from tools to the actual training that they need. Do they have the skills that they need? Do they need some skill building in areas? Number 3 is, at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best. Once again, I think when people come to work, they want to give their best. They want to contribute their best. But as leaders, we don't always ask them, are there skills and abilities that they have that we're not actually utilizing? And so we just make these assumptions that people are coming to work and what they're doing is something that they like doing. But we very rarely ask that question. The next one, in the last 7 days, I've received recognition or praise for doing a good job. And, we know that from just the idea of rewarding and praising, we just can't say good job. We need to be saying very specifics. Hey, good job on facilitating that workshop last week. Hey, great job on getting that report done. So not just an overall good job, but give them very specific feedback. The next one is someone at work cares about me. Ensuring that they do have someone at work that cares for them. And then number 6, there's someone at work who encourages my development. So about a year ago, I worked with a local university that was having turnover about in the 60%-ish area. And we came to this question, and I asked the leaders, whose job was it to ensure that the employees had development opportunities? And it was a sticky situation because the leaders felt like the employees should be providing development opportunities for themselves. But of course, all our data shows that our employees are expecting us as leaders to provide those developmental opportunities. And so, the best thing I can give to you guys is this really is a partnership. Working together as a leader and employee today is a partnership. And so it's asking where those opportunities are, meaning that, hey, where's an area that you want to develop your skills further? And then me as a leader helping find those opportunities for my employee to develop, not putting it all on them or not putting it all on us. Next one, at work, my opinion counts. We talked about that. Number 8, the mission or purpose of my company makes me feel like my job is important. And so, we know that having that mission and that purpose clearly written and out where people can see it, it is creating our objectives that are speaking back to that mission or purpose. Our processes actually connect back to that mission or purpose. And that knowing every single job description flows into that mission and purpose. The next one is that my associates or fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. So when I think of this one, I think about if we have actively disengaged employees, everyone around them knows it. And, actively disengaged employees, when they cause issues and we ignore that, it actually brings the rest of our team down. So, performance management and having a clear strategy within your organization of how you're going to address the actively disengaged is a conversation that each organization has to have. Okay, the next one is have a best friend at work. This is a really new one since COVID. I think there's always been work friendships, and I don't know if 5 years from now this will change as we get back to, kind of a new normal, that we get back out and have more social life. But this really emerged during COVID, because we saw that work friendships became people's main friendships. But right now in the data, it says that because we actually spend 88,000 hours in our lifetime at work, having a good friend at work is truly important. The next one, someone's talked to me about my progress. So having open, honest feedback, talking to me about what I'm doing great, talking to me about where I may be struggling or, some opportunities for growth. And that feeds right into that last one, is that the conversations we're having today are about learning and growing. We're definitely at a new place in the workforce that people are not willing to stay in jobs that there are not learning and growing at things going on. So, as we look at younger generations, this is one of the big ones for them. What they have learned and what they have grown through is a bigger testament to their resume than where they have worked. So if you want to retain a talented young person, then you have to have the door open for them to learn and grow. And, you know, in the areas that they want to learn and grow. So asking those questions, what is it that you want next? What do you want to do next? So here are the 12 questions that are asked on the Gallup survey. Once again, you can go out and get that tool yourself, or you could facilitate this yourself. So if you decide that this is something you want to do on your own, here is a tool that you can buy online. We spend more work than at home. It's true. Coworkers are like second family. They so are. You know, Carrie, it's interesting. The only thing we do more hours than working is sleeping. So we sleep, we spend more hours at work and then with our family. You know, so it's a big part of our life. I mean, this is a big part of our life. And I think for the first time, we're understanding that the impact of what happens at work. I mean, we know it from, you know, everything we've seen in the last couple of years, that work really truly impacts us. And so people have taken that very seriously. So online, Gallup has several workbooks that you can buy, and these workbooks are $20 each. And they have lots of activities inside them that if you decided to, you know, facilitate this on your own, or if you actually use the tool, they will encourage you to buy these. And these can take you through conversations of creating that team culture. And, you know, I mentioned just a moment ago that this is an organizational conversation. So I'm getting ready to work with a team of people that have about 300 employees, and they are taking on as a strategy for the next year, you know, really how to move engagement in their organization. And one of the first conversations that I had with them is, you know, what is the purpose of this? Is the purpose to try and increase your engaged employees to, you know, 50% to 90%, whatever it is? Is it trying to reduce your actively disengaged employees that you know that they are really bringing your workforce down? So, you know, I'll say that to you as you really begin to look at employee engagement. You know, what is the purpose in the end? What is it that you're trying to achieve here? Because these tools can definitely help you achieve that. So here is, it's kind of hard to see this, it's a screenshot of that workbook, but I wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like in this workbook if you happen to purchase it. So it takes, you can take one of the questions, such as, at work, my opinion seems to count. And then, you know, do a deep dive with your employees and then find out, why is this so important to your team's success? So these are conversations you can have as a team. You also have with individuals, but this is just an example of this tool that you can truly use. What are two questions you could use to explore this element with a manager struggling with your team? So as you look at this, you know, how can you ask the right questions? Because we know it's about asking the right questions to help actually walk through this. And why is this workplace need often unmet? So at the end of the day, you know, we talked a lot about employees' needs. And as long as employees' needs go unmet, then we're never going to get to the place of being those high-performing teams, to being those high-performing organizations. So it really is about finding out where those workplace needs are not being met. And so as you see, this is just one tool that can help you walk through the process of digging a little deeper. So, they have various workbooks that are just full of these tools. So if you happen to identify, let's just say with question 5, you had an organization that says, I don't have someone at work that cares for me, then as a leadership team, as an organizational team, you would really dig deep and from your perspective, figure out what's going on around that unmet need. And then you would be sitting with your employees and asking that same question. And, we started with this idea of listening. And the idea of listening is that somewhere in the middle is probably where the truth is, somewhere in the middle, because we all have our perceptions from wherever we stand in the organizations. So we are getting close to the end, and this is one of my favorite quotes. It's not our job to show up and have all the answers. Our role is to create an environment in which great things can happen. Our role is to open the doors to allow our employees to do great things. So when I look at leadership, I know that I have 2 choices as a leader. I can, provide opportunities that that encourage my employees, that take my employees to that next level of leadership, or I can be that leadership lid that holds their leadership down. And that, of course, is the very last thing I ever want to be. But I will tell you today, in today's workforce, if we are that, then we won't have people working for us. So many times when I work with teams, I will find out turnover stats from specific managers, and I will have actual C-suite leaders say, hey, I need you to really work with this person because they've got a 70% turnover in their employees. And I will tell you, many times there are jobs and roles that happens, but when it's something that, it's an industry that doesn't normally happen, we know it starts and ends with that leader. So we are just a few minutes away from 2:50, or from whatever time zone you're in. For me, it's going to be 2:15. And I wanted to give some time for questions, but I want to tell you that what I've taught today is no easy feat for leaders. I'm not suggesting that this is anything that is less than learning to manage ourselves and lead ourselves so that we can lead others. But as an organization, IDRS Acorn Project that I work for works completely free with tribal leaders and tribes in these things. So here's my information. If I can be of assistance to you, if you need individual technical assistance or coaching, if you just need to have a conversation and you say, I just cannot see that this is where the workforce is, I don't know how to get there, you're among many of us. It's a new day. And so as we begin to learn this and introduce this, I hope that you guys have gained a lot today, and that this is a conversation you can begin to have if you haven't with your employees. Brooke, with that, I would love to open it up to questions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This has been fantastic information. So if anyone still has any lingering questions that you want to take advantage of the time that we still have Camille here, go ahead and send those in the chat. I'm going to hang back for a minute or so. I don't see anybody type in just yet, but I'm going to give it another minute before we move on.
Okay.
All right, I'm not seeing anybody typing, but of course this will be open for another few minutes. But thank you so much, Camille. This was an amazing presentation. It looks like everybody is very clear on everything because we're not getting any questions just yet. While we do close out the webinar, folks, I am going to ask you to please fill in today's survey. Your feedback helps us to make sure we're doing what we're doing, keeping up with the stuff that works, maybe tweaking the things that don't necessarily work as well as you'd like them to, and we're able to give feedback to our instructors as well. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that survey for all of you now. If you could please take a moment or so to complete it for us, that would be amazing. So it should be opening for you now in a web browser. And we got some compliments for you here coming in the chat, Camille. No questions yet. Everyone's just saying thank you and a very helpful and informative presentation. Absolutely, guys. So I have launched the survey for you all. If anybody missed it, I am going to send the link in today's chat, and it's also available for you in that web links pod that is included in the meeting room right now. I hope you will come back and join us this Thursday. Camille is doing another webinar with us on time management in 20 minutes a day. So we know we could all use some help with our time management, absolutely. The times that it'll be occurring and all the different time zones are up there. And remember, registration for our webinars is always free. So feel free to access today's webinar and any other recorded webinars online on our website at www.nativelearningcenter.com. We have a Catheta webinars tab and a recorded webinars section. So you could click on any one of the webinars that we've done for the past 18 months. Feel free to view them, share them with your friends and colleagues. We love for the information to be spread around. Always valuable stuff. All right, and go ahead and check out our upcoming events as well. We do have social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we even have a podcast titled Hopathanga. So you can find that on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We're working on a lot of great stuff coming up. And once again, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We really value your time. I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and we hope to see you back here on Thursday for Camille's webinar on time management. I'm going to go ahead and stop